Hi, I'm Alex Anders, and this is Bisexual Real Talk. When you forget that the time changes and you have to shoot an hour earlier, and you don't. But for those of you on the podcast, I'm shooting a new location. It's kind of obvious. So, yeah, let's get on to it. Before I go on to answer one of the questions that one of you guys sent in, I'm going to mention that if you are kind of tired of hiding your bisexuality on dating apps, I have a relationship with BiCupid where if you sign up using the one of the links in the description below, you will help support the channel. Why would you want to, well, obviously support the channel, but why would you want to use BiCupid? Imagine 2.2 million people around the world who are just specifically looking to date you as a bisexual. You know what your experiences are on OkCupid if you've been there. You know what your experiences are on other dating apps. But 2.2 million people are out there looking to date bisexuals specifically, and they are on this app. So if you want to see whether this is the best decision you'll ever make, click on the link in the description below and check it out and help support the channel. And I will also mention that, did you guys know that I wrote a book called Everybody Masturbates? And more about that at the end of the video. So now let's jump into the question. You'll understand why I mentioned that once I finish the question here. So this is coming from N, and they say, "Dear Mr. McAnders." Now, first of all, thank you for using McAnders, simply because I know that means that you are familiar with my romance books. And thank you for reading and thank you for checking it out. It goes on to say, "First of all, I am not a native speaker, so my apologies for writing any mistakes." There were no mistakes. "I am a bisexual man from Belgium, the Dutch region, and I've seen some of your videos on your YouTube channel. And I must say, I'm very grateful that such a channel exists. Some topics you've mentioned over the years resonate with my personal experiences. But I've been struggling with one topic you haven't mentioned yet." And I hadn't. "I'm a happily married man, and my wife knows I'm bi, and I have 2 sons who I love dearly. I don't know if you're a dad or not. FYI, I am not. But as a dad, I want to nurse and protect my children in the best way possible. And as a bisexual man, it isn't easy. My oldest son is 12 and turns 13 soon. He doesn't know that I'm bisexual. I would like to tell him, but is it the right thing to do? I feel like it's putting my own needs before his. I've accepted who I am, but I know that the community I live in won't accept it so openly like my wife did. I want to be honest with my kids, but I feel like I'm putting my burden on their shoulders by telling them too soon. I don't want my kids to be bullied because of their dad. So if there's one thing that weighs on me for being bisexual, it is what I have just described to you. I truly feel bisexuality is a difficult gift. By that I mean that I'm long past the time that I wish I wasn't bisexual. It's a part of me, and I'm sure that part of me makes me a better dad and husband. It makes me more empathetic towards other people's struggles. But sometimes I'll have to make difficult choices regarding my sexuality. I wonder if other bisexual parents have the same issues. Thanks for all of your lovely channel, and hopefully I can see a reaction video on this topic. Kind regards, N." Well, part 1 solved. Reaction video, here it is. First of all, before I jump into my reply to this, my reaction to this, I want to mention something else. You mentioned that bisexuality is a difficult gift. It really is, in a lot of ways. Like, for some people, growing up bisexual makes you so much more empathetic because because of all the things you've done on your own self and your own life and what it means for you, you tend to think about other people and what other things can mean for other people. It's basically the same struggle of anything else. Like if you grew up and you didn't have access to opportunity, you grew up poor, let's say, some people grew up thinking, oh, I'm going to be more empathetic because I know what it is to struggle. But then there are also the other groups that grow up thinking, well, I had to struggle, so screw you. You're going to have to struggle just as hard. There are a lot of bisexuals that turn dark. Like Aaron Hernandez is an American football player, and he murdered someone and went to jail and then committed suicide in jail. Turns out he's bisexual, and turns out that bisexuality played a large part in why he was as angry as he was. So did football. Turns out that he had his brains bashed into him and was suffering from something that a lot of football players suffer from. But that, on top of the fact that he was struggling with bisexuality, turned him murderous. It was really sad. And then there was a shooter from the gay nightclub in Miami a few years back who turns out he was bisexual. And the person who killed Matthew Shepard, this horrible murder from a while ago, turns out one of them was just straight out gay and the other person who killed him was bisexual. Like there's ways that bisexuality can turn you into a much better empathetic human being, and ways it can turn you into a monster. And one of the reasons why I do this channel is because I'm trying to get less monsters out there. Because the only reason why you turn bad is because you think it plays on you so in a negative way, and you don't know how to deal with it. And in turn, you lash out. You're afraid that you won't be accepted. You're afraid that you're the only one. And this all creates a pressure in you that makes you do really horrible, bad things. Hence the channel. So I'm glad you enjoy the channel. And I'm glad it's been helpful for you. So now, your question. The question is, of course, should you share with your children that you are bisexual? I'm going to start out by saying this. Keep in mind that bisexuality has a genetic component to it. So there's a higher likelihood that if you are bisexual, that your kids will be either homosexual or bisexual. So just keep that in mind. I've been thinking for weeks now about doing a video. I think I'm probably going to call it, Did My Mother Make Me Bisexual? In which case, I'm going to explain what science understands at this point, what causes a person to be bisexual or homosexual. Still working on it. It's going to be quite the effort, but we'll see when that comes out. So yes, there is a genetic component to it. So it's quite possible that you could be wondering whether or not you should tell your children that you are bisexual while they're dealing with the exact same thing. Keep in mind that even if they're not 50-50 bisexual, they could be mostly straight, in which case they're still trying to struggle through the ideas of, should I explore stuff? What does this mean about me? And all that stuff. And a good large portion of the population, something like 42% of the population, is somewhere on that bisexual spectrum. Is your child one of them? It's a higher likelihood that they are because you're bisexual. Just keep that in mind. Second of all, I like to point out this. Hey, I am not a parent, so take it for what you will. But I say this with complete confidence because I've thought a lot about this over the years. There's one job that every parent must succeed at to be, let's say, a good parent. And this one job applies to you as a human being, but it also applies to a dog who has puppies, or a cat who has kittens, or a lion, or a bird. There's one job. There's one job, and that is to help your offspring survive and maybe even thrive in the environment that they're growing up in. That's it. That is the one job of every parent, no matter the species. Now, it's more complex with humans because what is surviving? The complexities of, first of all, you need to be able to feed yourself. So you need to help your kids figure out a way that they can feed themselves, and whether it's going to school and get an education and all that stuff or not. And it's also surviving the environment they're going to grow up in. Like in America, it's becoming a little bit more famous now that black parents tell their black kids they give them what's called the talk, in which case they talk about how American society isn't fair towards them as it is towards people who are not black, and how to deal with police because police treat black kids differently than everyone else. It's the talk. But it's the same premise where a parent is helping their child survive and thrive in the environment they're going to be living in. So the question is, according on this topic, is will you telling your kids that you are bisexual help them to survive and perhaps thrive in the environment they're growing up in? And the question is, what type of environment is your child growing up in? You're in Belgium. I have no idea what it's like growing up in Belgium. But I can tell you that in America, the idea, the thoughts behind being bisexuality, of being bisexual, is changing. But like if you're under the age of 17, there's a lot of places where people think being bisexual is cooler. It really is. There's a shift that's just happened because of how many actors and singers have come out as bisexual. So this generation growing up has a different perspective on what bisexuality is than you, N, person who wrote this letter. So keep that in mind. So in their classroom, what is going on? Is it possible that there are kids coming out as bisexual in your 13-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old son's classroom? And how is your son responding to that? Like, hopefully you're raising him to be like empathetic like you are, but you know what it is growing up in a classroom where things like situations pop up constantly and you have to choose sides, whether you're on the side of this kid or the side of that kid. What if you telling them helps them to be on the right side of history in their own mind? What if you sharing this information with them helps them to become more empathetic to people like yourself, or maybe even people like them who they are themselves? What if you sharing your bisexuality helps them to come to grips with their own bisexuality, because of course the likelihood of them being bisexual is higher because you are? What if those are the case? So just keep that in mind as you go along. The next thing you should know is, well, just what I was kind of saying is, would you telling them that you're bisexual help them to make better decisions moving forward? Whether it's better decisions from like a perspective of that sort of classroom situation, whether it's better decisions from the perspective of their own personal situations or dating other bisexuals or anything along those lines. Consider that. Will you telling them help them to make better decisions? And I will say that if you do decide to tell them, define what it is to be bisexual for them. Because if you choose not to tell them, or if you choose not to talk to them about this topic, the world is going to define what bisexuality is for them. Which means the world is going to define who you are to them. Because eventually you're probably going to tell them bisexual, whether it's this year or next year or in 10 years or in 20 years. And think about it. They're going to think you are whatever the world has told them that you are. So if there's some kid in their class who's talking trash about bisexuality, and then you tell them that they're bisexual, then they're going to take that kid's perspective and go, oh, that must be a negative thing that my father is this way. So if you choose to tell them, maybe even if you don't choose to tell them, choose to define what bisexuality is to you, so that when eventually it comes out that you are bisexual, that other kids in their class are bisexual, you have put the spin on it, the positive spin on it that you mentioned in this email, or the positive spin that you think it is. Define bisexuality for your kids. And remember, you don't have to go into the details about it. Like, you don't have to talk about your sex life. You can choose whatever things you want to help define it. You could just talk about it from a love perspective. You could talk about it from a just a life perspective, like the way bisexual, and basically what it means is, yes, it means these things over here, but what it does is it affects the way you think about things. It affects the way you see the world. It affects the way you do this. It affects your decision making. You could talk about whatever perspective you want, and it does not have to be detailed about it. In fact, I would probably shy away from talking about the sexual aspect of it at this particular age. And you could talk about it, consider talking about it from the idea of monogamy. At some point they're going to find out that there's a rumor that bisexuals sleep around or something like that. It's going to happen. They're going to hear that, even if they don't believe or take it in. They're going to hear it. So you could talk about it from the perspective of monogamy. Are you a monogamous person? And just put it out there before they get negative information that you are monogamous. Or you could talk about from a commitment standpoint, how it affects your ideas of commitment. In doing this, you could reinforce your child's ideas of what it is to be a committed person, or whether or not they should be committed in relationships and stuff like that. It can be a learning opportunity. You could share your values. And you could ask the question, what you're concerned about is that, this is what's going on in your life. What's going on? What's perspective that he's getting in his classroom? Is there a chance that he could be bullied for that? You could ask these questions and have it be a conversation piece so that when negative things might happen in the future, he can feel more comfortable coming to you and talking to you about it. You could use this as an opportunity to become closer to your children and not drive them away or create a burden on them. And more importantly than that, by giving them this information, you would help them survive and perhaps thrive in the environment they're going to grow up in. Because the environment they're going to grow up in is them having a bisexual father. That's the environment. So would you, sharing this information with them in the ways I've described, help them survive or thrive in the environment they're going to grow up in? That's the decision you have to ask yourself. And I will mention this. I mentioned that I wrote a book called Everybody Masturbates. I did. I actually wrote a series of books. It was actually the Everybody Masturbates was the second book I ever published. And it turned out it was like a bestseller. It was my first bestseller. And people to this day still buy it and still like it and stuff like that. What it does is it helps people. It helps kids, actually. It's written for kids between the ages of 8 and 13, 14. And it helps them to come to grips with what masturbation is and the health aspects of it, and whether it's okay or not okay to do. And I wrote that book for boys. I wrote another one called Everybody Masturbates for Girls. But the reason why I'm bringing this topic up, because it's a series of 3 books, and the third book is called Everybody Has Those Thoughts, So It Doesn't Mean You're Gay. That's right. And it's, of course, a play on bisexuality. And I wrote it for kids between the ages of, let's say, I think it's about between ages of 11 and about 15, if they are bisexual, to help them understand what bisexuality is, what's going on with them, and to better navigate their world as a bisexual. One thing you might consider doing is sharing this book with your child. Now, it's not available everywhere. You can get a hardcover copy on Amazon, but mostly places like Barnes & Noble. But basically, just type the title into, there's going to be a link in the description below of where you can find it. Someplace you can find it. But you're in Belgium, so you're going to have to type it into Google and see where it comes up. But I recommend perhaps sharing that with your child. And if you are listening to this and you do have a child that you think is bisexual, or if you are bisexual, check it out. It really helps put things in perspective. That book is coming on 10 years old. I can't believe I've been writing for 10 years. I've been doing this channel for 4 going on 5 years too. Man, time flies, doesn't it? 2020, man, just crazy things happen, and it takes forever to go past, and now it's all gone by, and what's happened. By the way, happy election to all of you who are happy the way the election turned out. I know I am. But that's not what this channel is about, so yeah, we won't talk about that. But if you are a parent, and you would like to give some advice on whether or not you should tell your child that you're bisexual if you are a parent, or if you are a person, you're a young person, and you would like to add your perspective of what you feel it would have been like if your parents would have shared that they were bisexual. Would that have made you feel better? Would that have made things more confusing for you? What do you think your experiences would have been if your parents had shared with you that they are bisexual? I think about that a lot, because I'm thinking that my father, even though he lived a very heterosexual life, I often think that my father was probably bisexual. I don't even know why I think that. I just think I just do. So how would I have felt if my father had shared that with me? It's a question I ask myself. But how would you have felt? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, check out the BiCupid app if you're looking for dates and you're tired of, going through the hell you go through as bisexual on certain dating apps. And if you like to support this channel, another way you can do that is by supporting me on Patreon. We're going to be doing a group chat this month, which is very exciting. So if you'd like to do that, follow the link in the description below and check it out on my Patreon channel. Until the next time, stay cooler, my bisexual friends. Stay cooler. Bye.